Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit more about kind of transitioning from the service industry job. You said it was motivated by the desire to have a good home life. You also mentioned playing hide and go seek in almost finished houses with your kids. It sounds like families and home life have always been a very important thing to you. How has running a construction company created tension with that desire, or how has it fulfilled that desire to make family a priority?
I mean, it's definitely a Monday through Saturday business. We're not out there at 10 o'clock at night painting walls or anything. We're not in a reactive type role like a mold and fire company would be or anything like that. So it's definitely served its purpose. In that respect, running your own business, of course, has its challenges time wise. People will text, late in the evening and ask, is the plumber coming tomorrow? Or, hey, I looked in my kitchen and I noticed one of my drawers is missing. And so those are communication things that fortunately I think texting is for me is kind of a blessing because I can kind of set it down, pick it up and say, oh, this is what's going on with that. I just don't mind it. Some people are very sharp about where they put their lines. And for me, it's something that I just kind of flow with.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Orlando Podcast. With me today is Eliot Grime. Elliot, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Elliot, we're going to start this off the same way we do every time. Tell me, why is it that you do what you do?
Well, in my senior year of high school, I went through a hurricane in my hometown, and I saw how much I was good at helping people fix homes and work on homes. I did a few other things for a lot of years, and I kind of circled back to it as time went on, and I got into family life and everything. And I really enjoy the aspect of taking something that doesn't look good or doesn't work and actually making it work, and making it nice and clean and pretty.
Well, that's really specific. So and very cool. I want to dig into a couple of things that I heard in there really quickly. Uh, what specifically do you do today that in regards to fixing things, making them look pretty? I think you mentioned it, but just so that we can be real specific with our
Sure. So what I do is I run a general contracting company. A lot of times people call us when a home needs a second level of work, more than just carpet and paint or LVP and paint, I guess nowadays. If a home needs $100,000, $200,000 renovation, space changes, the bathrooms, are next to each other and you want them across the house from each other. We worked on firehouses. We worked on houses that have been hit by vehicles. We definitely do additions. Anything that you're seeing as far as driving around town, where you're seeing these major changes happening to homes in upcoming areas, we're involved in those processes, and it's really enjoyable. It's really nice to take a house that's clunky and make it very usable, and of course have some more value. But ultimately, it's all about the use of it for most people.
That's really cool. Is it so much about taking something ugly and making it pretty? Is it more about making the neighborhood nicer because you're updating homes, or is it just about, or does the satisfaction come from just helping anyone that needs help with a project that may be over their head?
I think a lot of it has to do with actually showing people that anything can be done within reason. We definitely have neighbors. We worked on a few houses that have been vacant for somewhere between 2 and 3 years. And when a house has been vacant for 2 or 3 years, the neighbors are like bringing you sodas and cookies because they're so happy that you're finally cutting the grass and you're finally, taking the boards off the windows and things like that. So that's really enjoyable. And one thing I do with these houses, like I take my kids to play hide and go seek in them when they're almost to completion, when they're safe and the wires are put away and everything. So we understand that we're building a home not only to put on the market, but people are going to live and enjoy this home for many years. And so if a home was, for instance, burned and now there's a family living in it, and enjoying their life in it, I mean, it's got a satisfaction value to it.
That's awesome. So I want to go back to how you started this. Which hurricane was it? What area did it hit?
Sure, I'll date myself. This is Hurricane Andrew in 1992. It hit South Florida. It was a historic hurricane. We've had a few since, definitely, but I lived just out of the zone of the mass destruction, so I had a place to sleep and everything, but everything below me, south towards the Keys, was really destroyed. So in high school, I was getting off school and going and working from 3 p.m. to 6 or 7 p.m. and making pretty good money as a high school kid, and just learned how to drywall studs, paint. You learn the basic core things of what's a pipe and what's a wire. If you got a Sawzall out, those are important. Those are important facts to have in your belt.
Yeah.
And so my father is an electrician, so I had some knowledge there, and I just kind of kept with it. And I just like doing stuff more than I liked sitting. I have a degree in college and stuff, but I didn't want to be a desk guy, and so I just chose to kind of be out in the world doing this.
How long did you? So you did it in high school when Andrew came through. Did you keep doing it through college, or did you transition to work?
I did, and then I got in the restaurant industry. And I did 11 years of restaurant industry, bars and restaurants, and cooking and corporate training and all kinds of stuff. I've always been the kind of person that'll kind of go wherever help is needed. So if a dining room was in good condition, but a kitchen was failing, that I would jump into the kitchen for weeks, months, or hours according to what was needed. And I kind of like to jump around without being too unfocused. It just was always enjoyable to spend a week in the kitchen and then spend a week in the dining room. It was less boring to me than just always being in one position.
I think it's interesting that you had some construction experience, went into a service industry, and then came back into construction. Do you think your time in the service industry has helped you in the construction business that you now find yourself in?
It's helped me in two ways. One is designing kitchens, even though they're not corporate kitchens. For the most part, I work obviously on people's home kitchens.
Yeah.
But understanding about food prep and things like that is a little bit in there. But also just understanding that if you ask people what they need instead of telling them what you think they need, it works better. And really getting to understand somebody's project makes a lot of sense versus just telling them what you think they want. So yeah, being on your feet in the service industry, I was a dining room manager a lot of my career, and the food's burned. My kid didn't get his chicken tenders, that kind of stuff. You learn how to get a little bit of a thick skin, and also, but you just learn to adapt and overcome and figure out what it is that those people need to satisfy. Sometimes it's a bowl of ice cream at that point, Right. So it molded well, I think.
That's awesome. So at what point did you transition back to doing construction work?
I knew that married life in the restaurant industry was not conducive. You miss a lot of holidays, you miss a lot of weekends, you miss a lot of nights. So I actually got engaged and quit the restaurant industry in the same month.
Wow. And so at that point, did you start a business? Did you start running a business? Did you just go to work?
I joined my current business partner. He had an existing, it was a business that serviced property management companies. So we started cutting our teeth, or he'd already started it, but we did a lot of painting, repair, rental property changing, where you basically pull a house in and you trim the trees, cut the grass, pressure clean the walks, make sure everything works, light bulbs, clean blinds, all that good stuff. But you learn a lot in doing that. You learn how to do a drywall patch, you learn how to adjust a door, you learn how to tell, I can look at a tub or I can find leaks and things like that really quickly. So that's why I still get called sometimes, because people will be like, "Oh, I've had a plumber look at it and they can't figure it out," and I'm like, "Oh, it's that." And they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "It's that." So We did a lot of that, and then as time went on, we determined that we were getting uh, a lot of asks for things that were starting to fade into general contracting, like repipes and rewires. And as homes, get into the 25 to 50 year age bracket, then they need more extreme things. So my business partner picked up and got his general contracting license in 2014.
2014. So from 2014 to now, how has your business grown? Like what are
We do additions. We get called for things that obviously general contractors can achieve. And some of our clients have actually come all the way through that process. I mean, I still work for people that I worked for 15 years ago. Just now they use us for more general contractor type stuff. And if they need a toilet flapper replaced, then we're no longer their maintenance guy, but it's still a good relationship to have.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit more about kind of transitioning from the service industry job. You said it was motivated by the desire to have a good home life. You also mentioned playing hide and go seek in almost finished houses with your kids. It sounds like families and home life have always been a very important thing to you. How has running a construction company created tension with that desire, or how has it fulfilled that desire to make family a priority?
I mean, it's definitely a Monday through Saturday business. We're not out there at 10 o'clock at night painting walls or anything. We're not in a reactive type role like a mold and fire company would be or anything like that. So it's definitely served its purpose in that respect. Running your own business, of course, has its challenges time wise. People will text, late in the evening and ask, is the plumber coming tomorrow? Or, hey, I looked in my kitchen and I noticed one of my drawers is missing. And so those are communication things that fortunately I think texting for me is kind of a blessing because I can kind of set it down, pick it up and say, oh, this is what's going on with that. I just don't mind it. Some people are very sharp about where they put their lines. And for me, it's something that I just kind of flow with.
Sure. Well, that's I'm kind of the same way. I could work all day, every day, if someone let me, because I really enjoy what I do. But I know that some other people need clearer boundaries, and I too set some clear boundaries just because I do have a young daughter, and I try to make that a priority and spend the time that she's home and awake with her. So
Absolutely. I'm in a home office at this point, and sometimes I'll be at the home office and I get up for dinner. I put it down for dinner. I get up, but I'm in and out of the office,
yeah.
which isn't hugely productive. But it beats working in a restaurant. And I actually chose to leave the restaurant industry. One Christmas Eve, I was working and it was midnight, and I was still in an empty restaurant, and that was when I was like, all right, I'm done. Like this is it. Christmas Eve, midnight. It was just me and a dishwasher there, and of course, all the higher ups have gone home, and someone's got to lock the doors and count the money and all that. So it was a good experience, but ultimately, I think that this industry made more sense for me.
Very cool. So you mentioned that running your own business has some challenges. Aside from people texting you late at night, what were some of the early challenges that you faced as you guys sought off on this endeavor, or as you started to take over the business, as the management of the business from your partner?
Definitely in construction, I think everybody is challenged with the very best version of how you think a project's going to go. And when projects get bigger, as they are in general construction, it's very challenging to say, hey, we're going to get all this done in 8 days or 9 days. And so we're going to budget for, maybe 9 days of work and 9 days of labor, and we're renting a piece of equipment. So the answer is to not not make it seem too easy, to not have an over aggressive timeline.
One of the big challenges is just managing expectations with clients on how long things are going to be and making sure that you're setting
Right.
proper expectations.
Yeah,
Or
my current explanation to people is it's like when you go to the airport and you see all the planes out on the tarmac and they're all ready to go and they're all lined up and the plane people are already in the planes and stuff, but at the end of the day, plane 1 has to go before plane 2 can go, and plane 2 has to go before plane 3 can go. And television has taught us that all the planes can just fly out of the same airport. And so I'm I always tell people, if I could remodel your kitchen in a week and you would pay me the total balance, then I would happily do it. It's just that we're waiting on the plumber, we're waiting on the electrician, we're waiting on the drywall, we're waiting on the countertops, and things don't go like they do on television in 20 minutes plus commercials.
yeah. So um, I I think I understand this, and some people may not. But as a general contractor, are all of the laborers, the people actually doing the physical work, are they all employed by you, or are you guys oftentimes using what's called a subcontractor?
Hey, before we go any further, if you're enjoying this content, please like and subscribe so you can help us get the word out about these amazing people and businesses here in the Orlando area. Don't miss out on upcoming episodes and help out the show. Now let's get back to it.
That's a good question. Different general contractors run it different ways. There's what I call a self-performing contractor, and there are nothing but subcontractors, and I actually have a hybrid. So I have 5 staff members that are on my time card and my workers' comp, and then I have subcontractors for specialties like air conditioning, plumbing, roofing, electrical, which technically we would not be able to perform anyway.
Why would you not be able to perform electrical anyways?
So we're licensed as a general contractor. We're not licensed as an electrical contractor. It's
Gotcha.
actually a different license. And some states have different plate. That varies by state. But in this state, if you ever see a truck on the road, it'll have an ELE number on it, and we have a CBC number. So technically, if we rewired a panel and something happened, we would be liable, where the electrician's supposed to do it.
Got it. Very
So, and
cool.
it's the relationships with the subcontractors and of course with the employees that make things work, so that when you do have an issue, hey man, I need you to come over here tomorrow morning because we've got to move this pipe. All the countertops are coming in and something, changed. And you have to be proactive and also reactive at the same time.
Did you have any challenges managing a team? You said you have 5 team members, or did you find that a lot of the experience you got in the restaurant industry translated into being able to manage those people better?
I think it all translates. I've always, you treat people with, respect and dignity, and pull people aside when there's things that need to be remedied, and praised publicly, and all the basic leadership skills I think come into play. We work in, a hard environment. Sometimes houses aren't air conditioned in the summertime and things like that. So if you jump out of an air conditioned truck and start yelling at guys, probably not going to have guys very long. That was something I was taught many years ago. Don't ever jump out of an air conditioned truck that you've been sitting in all day and start yelling at the guy in the ditch, because he might just throw the shovel at you.
That seems like sage advice that almost anyone could learn something from. Yeah, and I think back to the times when I had a boss who would come out of wherever else to yell at all of us that were doing whatever the harder work was. Not necessarily harder or more important, but it seemed more laborious, and the resentment that you can quickly build for that kind of individual.
At one,
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, at a point in time, I was working with a young grill cook many years ago, and he started mouthing off and telling me that, what am I going to do if he goes home and this kind of thing. And the guy that was working next to him said, Elliot's a corporate grill trainer, so I think he can handle those couple of steaks in front of you. So I think knowing how to do the job and also Being able to solve problems in the field helps a lot, because the guys understand that for the most part I can do what they're doing, and I'm happy to help them when the time comes. If we're like lifting a beam or doing something that's pretty important, I'm definitely there. If it's that kind of level of stuff going on.
Yeah, very cool. I'm curious, what's the coolest project you've ever worked on, in your opinion?
Coolest project I've ever worked on. There's a house that we did in Winter Park that I just have an affinity for. It was a home that had been added on to and remodeled several times throughout the 80s and 90s. And we opened it all up, put a triple sliding glass door in the back, made a laundry room, made it a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, and then we threw a big party there. So that's kind of my affinity home. It's right off. It's actually just outside of Winter Park. You can hit a golf ball to Winter Park. It's in a little spot off Corinne Drive, and it just was a really clunky. It's on my website. It was just a really clunky, poorly shaped. We literally opened walls and found like dead spaces and things like that. And it just came out outstanding. So I think that's the one I have the most affinity for.
What's the most challenging project you ever took on?
Probably I call it the firehouse. It was a house that had caught on fire. It was a 3-alarm fire, and the fire was in the carport. It was a home that had the carport, and it had up at the front of the carport, it had the washer and dryer in an outdoor closet, and the fire was in that space. And the fire had started to make it into the living space, but had been stopped by a concrete wall. And it was a 13-month project. It was over $100,000 in renovation. It was basically like building a house in most respects. But it just was challenging. The county that we were working in gave us kind of a full press on it. They made us cross every T and dot every I, and just really really put us through the ringer on it. But it came out great, and it's a great house, and a young family lives in it now.
What advice would you give to somebody that's thinking about getting into the construction industry, either as a laborer, or maybe they've already been a laborer, maybe they're thinking about getting a GC license and hanging out a shingle? Any words of advice or wisdom that you would give to them?
Yeah, I mean, if you're coming on as a laborer, I would definitely look at the different fields that are out there are really interesting. I think just like anybody that's not in a particular industry, you don't realize the amount of different slices it has. So commercial construction, road construction, residential construction, residential service. There's just a lot of spaces you can work in. I mean, you could work at a shopping mall where you're the maintenance guy at the shopping mall, and you kind of do the golf cart thing and hang out, and then you could work in the road construction where you're one of the guys on I-4. So I think knowing what makes sense to you is the important part, and then researching the company to make sure that they're the kind of company that's going to be safe. For me, safety would be a big issue there. If it was a company that was notoriously unsafe, I don't think I would want to work there as a laborer. And then if you were wanting to be a general contractor, I would say you definitely want to have been in the industry for about 5 years and really understand where you're at and what the realities are, much like you would in real estate. Kind of really know what's going to happen, not just day one, like, oh, I like to go to Home Depot. I want to be a general contractor.
You mentioned knowing what some of the realities are. What are some of those realities or those challenges that they're going to face right out the gate if they were to go and try to do something like that?
If you're not established in the area that you're working, you're going to have to do a lot of work for pretty tight pricing to establish yourself with people so that you can start to build your reputation. So you're going to be doing a lot of work for a little bit, a little smaller amount of money. Also, the companies that sell us things, obviously they're going to give better deals to people that have been, you can't even get credit accounts with some of these builders or like building supply companies for several years. So if you wanted to go, say, buy siding for a home, you're going to have to come out of pocket, go buy the siding, install the siding, and get paid for said siding. So, as time goes on, of course, if you've been in the industry a few years and you have a credit account, they'll drop it off for you. You pay them when you're done, and you can, there's obviously a huge cash flow difference to now the customer pays me and now I get to pay the supply house is a much better cash scenario than buying it first when you're talking, $12,000, $15,000 in siding. So, that, and I think setting up systems early on, there was a lot of times that I ended up setting up systems several years into processes and realizing like, like you said, CRM earlier, like I really wish I'd started some of those things on day one instead of waiting till the third year to realize that I should probably, push things into the same databases.
Yeah. That seems like some really sage advice. You mentioned something about having to take thinner margins early on as they established a name, or I think you said reputation. Talk to me a little bit about reputation. What are some things that you guys have done intentionally over time to help build your reputation? What are some things that could severely damage a contractor's reputation? Talk a little bit about that piece in reputation, maybe even reputation management.
Sure. Definitely the worst thing you could possibly do as a contractor would be to not finish a project. And it does happen. You get guys that get out there and they get halfway through it and they realize that they've either overpromised where they told 5 other people that they're going to be, hey, I'll be there next week. Hey, Tyler, I'll be there next week. Hey, I'll be there next week. And you've told all these people you're going to be there next week, and you're, you and a truck. I mean, it just simply doesn't exist. Everybody we work with, we make sure that we, beginning and currently and moving forward, obviously, we're always going to make sure we finish the project. We always make sure we budget it properly. I meet with clients sometimes and I give them a budget and they're, occasionally I get that's ridiculous. There's no way it's going to cost that much. I say, okay, I've done about 20 of these, but if you'd like to move forward on a smaller budget, then we're not going to be your contractor. So if you've got, enough work, then that can make sense for you. You can meet someone and say, I'm sorry, I'm not, if I think it's going to cost 30,000 and you think it's going to cost 15,000, it's not going to be a thing, and, no problem, move on. And you either drive by 2 years later and they've never started the project, or they found someone to do it and it looks like they spent half as much on it.
Do you guys have to do a lot of cleanup after other contractors? Do you get a lot of calls to come and finish projects or to fix what somebody else has done?
That's a good question. I get a monthly call. It's always kind of a sheepish conversation. Sometimes it's a realtor. Sometimes it's a second layer contact or something, somebody that knows me. Oh, my friend knows you, or, whatever. And I kind of hate to hear them. I actually, I'm doing this podcast, and of course I do some public speaking here and there, but it's historically the same scenario. It's somebody that's unlicensed that gave a sob story, or it was somebody from out of town, or it was one of those scenarios. Sometimes I get the flip houses where people are like, oh, my customers want to buy this flip, but the countertops are so crooked. Can you come and, lift the countertop and, paint the baseboards and, those kind of things. So it happens. We get the call. Like I said, literally about once a month, I get a call of somebody that has either gotten themselves in a situation or has bought something or is looking at a flip that it just doesn't have the fit and finish that they're looking for. Sometimes I can help them. Sometimes, unfortunately, if their money's already been taken from them, then the only thing we can do is maybe make it safe. I go look at them sometimes. I went to a lady's house one time. Her bathroom had been torn to pieces. and she'd given the guy like $30,000, and there was just there was nothing we could do. It was basically just gutted. All he'd done is tear down the tile and tear out the vanities and button off a few wires, and that was it. So she just had a full remodel on her hands. There was really nothing to be salvaged other than we could remodel this if you want, but she unfortunately didn't have the funds anymore.
Wow. Do you find that there's a lot of that where people get taken advantage of by contractors?
They do. It's a multi-million-dollar problem in the state of Florida.
Wow.
It's a multi-million-dollar problem, and if the person that you're dealing with is unlicensed, there's really nothing to go after, because if the person that you gave the money to was an unlicensed person, you can't go after their license. There's nothing to go after. And you could go after them in court and things like that. But these are the kind of people that skip around the state or the country, and you're never. I don't know of any instance that anybody's ever recovered any kind of money from them. Most people, there's an embarrassment factor, as you can imagine, because they kind of got taken, so they'll kind of, unfortunately, just kind of usually quit pursuing it after a while. But yeah, knowing that you're working with a licensed contractor, looking on DBPR, and making sure that, I tell people, ask any contractor that comes to your house, ask them to call one of your current clients, and there's no bad answer to that, because they can either tell you a house that they're working on, or they tell you, well, I'm not working anywhere right now, which is kind of a bizarre scenario, because it's like a realtor saying, well, let me see your listings. And you say, well, I don't have any listings. Well, let me talk to some of your buyers. Well, I don't have any buyers either. Okay.
People are new. Everyone starts
People are new.
somewhere,
Exactly. So
a general contractor would have some sort of reference to somebody they've either worked for or worked with. But I totally get that parallel. All right. So I'm curious, what is your favorite type of job? Do you have a particular type of job that you like to do? Do you like to do kitchens, full home remodels?
I love to flip houses.
Oh, you like to flip houses? Okay.
I like to flip houses. I like to do everything that there is to do. I like to design the landscape. I have a little bit of an affinity towards the not the design as far as the staging and the colors, but I love to redo the landscaping, change the house color, open up the windows, open up the walls, change where the stove and the refrigerator are sitting next to each other and there's all this room, anything like that where I get to fundamentally change the entire house. I really enjoy, and it's a little more functional for us because we can park all the trucks and not have to, if we turn off electricity and water and, make a bunch of noise and all that, we're not really, messing with anybody. We're getting stuff done. So, all said and done, flipping vacant homes is my ultimate fun.
That's your ultimate fun. Awesome. Well, Elliot, thank you so much for coming and spending some time with me. If people want to learn more about you or your business, what's the best place for them to get a hold of you?
On Facebook, I've got VE Builders LLC. You can search us on Facebook. We've got this lime green logo. There's a website. It's vebuildersllc.com. And there's a contact us button on there. And there's a phone number, which is 407-440-8529.
Awesome. So last question. If you were going to give somebody that was interested in getting into construction or an entrepreneur from your experience, one piece of advice, what would it be?
Add a few dollars to your rehab budget.
Okay. All right. Add a few dollars to your rehab.
Add a few dollars and add a few days.
Add a few dollars in a few days. Okay. That's a great piece of advice. People will keep that in mind. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I really enjoyed this conversation. And thank you to all of you that have been listening to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. And we'll see you around Central Florida. Bye.
Thanks for having me.